Hi, I'm Max, and this is Joshua. Uh, we are the
Hi,
co-founders.
Max. Hi, everybody.
We are the co-founders of Proof Africa, your favorite African stake pool, and we are here today for an AMA, and it was actually pretty successful. We get one question, so that's really wonderful.
That's good.
Uh, Yeah, that's really good. I was actually expecting even that we wouldn't even have a question. So Paul on Twitter asks, there are a number of decentralized platforms. What competitive advantages would a user gain from choosing to use Cardano? So um, first things first, we're talking here about user and not a developer. Um, that's already a big difference. I guess he was more talking about uh, developers as well. Users, you can obviously just use every platform. Um, but from a developer perspective, there are a number of things, right? By the way, Joshua, tune in whenever you want. um, there are a number of things to take into consideration. Actually, three. So the first thing is, well, what is your target market? So if you are, for example, focusing on, let's say, Uganda, well, you don't want to create an app on the platform which doesn't focus on Africa, right? You want to create an app on a platform which focuses on Africa, like Cardano, for example. But creating that smart contract on EOS, for example, would be less. It would just less make sense, right? Because there are not a lot of people who will use in the future um, EOS in Africa, at least from the info we can only have. This is just an example, of course. Now, so that's point one. What is your target markets? Now, the second point is regarding what are you developing. So, if you're, for example, developing a game, you don't need to have the same performances as if you were developing a kind of decentralized Wikipedia, for example, because a decentralized Wikipedia would require much less interactions than a game. And so, as a game, you would be much more. It would just make more sense to go and set up your your game on, for example, the like an EOS-like blockchain, and not a Cardano-like blockchain, simply because EOS is just much more centralized and is much more performance scalable. Um, while if you're a Wikipedia, well, you want to be pretty decentralized because, well, data and all of that. So, well, you obviously want to be on something like F2.0 or Cardano. Um, so, first thing, what is your target market? Second thing, what are you developing? And then third thing is longevity. So, and it's something which is quite overlooked actually. And you know, a lot of developers, when they build a smart contract, when they think about it, what they think about is on the long-term perspective, is the platform on which I'm building right now is going to last. And this is the case for blockchain, but it's also the case for an OS or something like that. As a developer, you're obviously not going to develop an app on a platform where you don't really trust it. You don't really think it's going to succeed on a long-term perspective. And so it doesn't make sense to go and, for example, if you don't believe in Tron, for example, it doesn't make sense to go and create an app on Tron simply because you for example think that in 10 years Tron will not be there anymore. Well, it doesn't make sense to go and develop your app on it. And regarding longevity, I think what's important is also to emphasize that decentralized blockchains are much more likely to survive on a long-term perspective, simply because it's just much more decentralized. EOS, for example, while it may still be there in 10 years, it's quite complicated, simply because it's not really accessible to participate in the blockchain. Becoming a block producer is not something easy. You need a ton of infrastructure, a ton of storage, a ton of security. Like, it's really very demanding, and so it's not really accessible. While if you have, for example, something like Cardano, where you can create a stake pool incredibly easily, well, it makes it much more accessible in a long-term perspective. You have much more chances of of your dApp still being there in like in 10 years, simply because it's just so accessible that anyone can run a node. And so I think that longevity is also um, a third thing here. Now, Joshua, do you have anything to add regarding that? Yeah, so just a quick timeout. Joshua is having a few connectivity problems, so yeah, he will not be able to like add some comments. Regarding now the user perspective, well, again, it all depends of bit markets. Well, obviously, if you're someone in for example living in Africa, and Cardano has already a whole ecosystem of dApps and smart contracts based on Africa, it doesn't make sense to to start using, for example, Ethereum, for example, which has not a lot of dApps based in Africa. This is just an example, of course. I'm just imagining stuff. Um, Inventing stuff. But this is just to show you that, well, you obviously want to use smart control blockchains which which are beneficial for you. And so I think that's something which is really important. Now, last thing is that in terms of blockchains, what we're seeing now is that you're seeing different types of blockchains and like different types of ways of doing things. Well, yeah, Joshua's left. Uh, so the first thing is, well, like you have the kind of like Ethereum, like blockchains, which um, are kind of like with the Linux approach, where they essentially build. Here's Joshua again. They essentially build stuff, but they don't do marketing about it. They don't market it. They just do great stuff, and that's it. So that's the Linux Ethereum-like approach. So build great tech, but that's it, and you do whatever you want with it. And it's kind of like more focused on developers, but that's it. Then you have the likes of at the other extremity. You have the likes of I guess Blockstack, Terra, and all of that, which are more like consumer-focused blockchains, and which are really focused on growth. Um, they are sometimes as focused on technical things, but they are also really focused on growth and marketing and getting wide adoption. Then you have the likes of Cardano, where it's kind of like in the middle. You have that focus on technical things, on developing the platform, and especially Cardano, that's a special presence with all that academic stuff. But you have also that other part which is also focused on growth. With working with governments, big enterprises, and mostly focused on Africa and in Japan. Um, so yeah, that's it for the three comparisons. And so, if you want, for example, want to target U.S. people living in the U.S. and like your average teenager, well, you don't want to be on, for example, Cardano, simply because Cardano is focused on Africa and Japan, and not really on the US and not really on teenagers. However, well, you can obviously be focused on develop it on Blockstack, for example, or some other consumer-focused blockchain. And if you're more like something like behind-the-scenes software, I guess, like more like server-side software, well, Ethereum or the likes of Cardano are more like a better way of doing things. So yeah, that's it. And I think that this was a great, successful AMA. Joshua has had, like every time, connectivity problems. But yeah, that's Nigeria, right? That's why we are doing this, and that's why we are working on Africa to solve all of these problems and to get Africa out of this horrible situation. Okay, so we are going to leave here. Well, I guess we will maybe organize another AMA in the future, but it all depends if we see that there is a meta or not, because this was kind of like not successful, kind of like a flop. So yeah, that's it. And take care of yourself, and yeah, delegate to Africa, and stay differently.